Welcome to Healing Spiritual Abuse and Religious Addiction. This is about spiritual abuse and spiritual reparenting. In today's lesson, we're going to be defining spiritual abuse and religious addiction and looking at how shame is going to play a role in religious addiction. What are the family roles in addiction, and what are some helping techniques that we as counselors or in the helping profession can use to treat religious addiction? So to find religious addiction, we can say that it is an attempt to control the painful inner reality through a rigid religious belief system, or insisting that others believe the same. And if they don't, they threaten my system of controlling my inner pain. Spiritual abuse is a form of emotional or psychological abuse. It's characterized by a systematic pattern of coercive and controlling behavior in a religious context. Spiritual abuse can have this really deeply damaging impact on those who experience it. The abuse can include manipulation, exploitation, enforced accountability, censorship of decision making, requirements for secrecy and silence, coercion to conform, an inability to ask any questions, control through the use of sacred texts or teachings, requirement of obedience to the abuser, the suggestion that the abusers have a divine position, isolation as a means of punishment, and superiority and elitism. Spiritual abuse can really happen within a religious organization or a personal relationship. It's not limited to one religion, denomination, or a group of people. It can happen in any religious group as an element of either child abuse, elder abuse, domestic violence. And domestic violence, which is also called intimate partner violence, can be a concern across relationships of all ages and genders and socioeconomic classes, ethnic groups, and also locations. Abuse is a pattern in which one individual, whether an intimate partner or a person with authority, uses fear, intimidation, violence, or harm to control another. Abuse can cause serious trauma and have a significant impact on your mental health. So it's important to remember that abuse is never your fault. And spiritual abuse can take place in a variety of settings. A person doesn't have to be a member of your family or a spiritual leader to spiritually abuse you. One form of spiritual abuse, which is religious abuse, takes place within a religious organization. An example of religious abuse is a religious leader using scripture or beliefs to coerce or control the behavior of the members of that organization. You might be experiencing religious or spiritual abuse if a religious leader has used scriptures or beliefs to humiliate or embarrass you. If they've coerced you into giving you money or other resources that you didn't want to give, they forced you to be intimate or have sex that you didn't want, made you feel pressured or obligated to do things that were against your will. These abusive tactics are found both in large, well-recognized faith organizations and also in cults. Often the leaders of these pseudo-religious groups will use spirituality as a way to exert control over their followers, and this can have serious consequences for both adults and children. Spiritual abuse does not have to be perpetrated by a religious leader. It can also be a facet of domestic violence. Domestic violence is much more than physical violence, which is hitting, kicking, and slapping, and so forth. It also has many psychological and emotional elements that really can cause a great deal of harm and distress. An abusive partner who is using spiritual abuse might shame or make fun of or ridicule your religious beliefs or practices, prevent you from practicing your religion the way that you would like to practice it, maybe using your beliefs to manipulate or bully you, demanding that your children be raised with or without a certain religion, using religious texts or beliefs to justify other kinds of abuse like physical or sexual, financial, etc. And people who experience abuse often feel ashamed or isolated, and they may wonder if they even deserve to be treated badly. Abuse is never the fault of the victim. Whether at home or within the religious organization, abuse is always the fault of the perpetrator. Religion and spirituality should be a source of comfort, peace, community, and inspiration in your life. If that's not the case, then you could be experiencing spiritual abuse. You might be experiencing spiritual abuse if your religious leadership or intimate partner is using scriptures or religious beliefs to maybe control your clothing, your behavior, your sexuality, your decision making, your choice to have children or not, your finances. Some other signs of spiritual abuse between intimate partners include when an abusive partner either ridicules or maybe they're insulting the other person's religious or spiritual beliefs. They prevent that partner from practicing their own rituals or spiritual beliefs. They're using their partner's religious or spiritual beliefs to manipulate or shame them. Again, forcing those children to be raised in a faith that the other partner hasn't agreed to. They're using religious texts or beliefs to minimize or rationalize the abusive behaviors. So it's no less harmful or difficult to endure than any other kind of abuse, as a person's spiritual life is really deeply personal, but it can be very difficult to identify, as a lot of the victims might not recognize that they're being abused. And in addition, the abusive partner might even claim that any challenge to the abuse is just an assault on their own religious freedom. We are aware that many will need a wise, discerning friend to help one see that they're in a spiritually abusive situation. And many are going to need to spend some time with a counselor. So spiritual abuse is going to impact people, and it's going to lead to some questions. Who can I trust? Who am I? How do I cope with fear? What do I believe? How long does this impact last? And who is here to support me? We don't want our clients to feel alone. And so one way we can help the client is by discussing how the client can deal with the spiritual abuse by saying things like, well, if you feel that you're experiencing spiritual abuse, whether from a religious organization or as an element of intimate partner violence, help is available. You don't need to endure this kind of trauma alone. You deserve to feel safe. Some options for dealing with spiritual abuse are leaving the organization or the relationship, speaking with a trusted friend or family member, or talking with an advocate from a hotline or a shelter. Somebody comes to you with a story of what may be spiritual abuse. How can we listen well? Oakley and Humphreys give 9 suggestions. Actively listen to the story, showing that you're taking it seriously. Ensure the individual telling the story knows that he or she is valued. Do not minimize or judge or defend a person or the church. Be clear about the boundaries to confidentiality. Take care of offering prayer or scripture as any response, and ensure that the individual can make a choice as to whether he or she wants this. Avoid using Matthew 18 as a first principle in responding to a disclosure of spiritual abuse. Don't rush people to a place of forgiveness and reconciliation. Discuss the risk of harm with your client and also your supervisor, and really consider the next steps carefully. Ensure that there is policy and procedure, including spiritual abuse in the church or denomination, and that is followed. If the client is experiencing spiritual abuse, it can really help to create a safety plan. And the safety plan can include reaching out to a trusted family member or, I'm sorry, not a family member, a member of the religious spiritual community for support. exploring options for practicing faith, religion in a safe way, and creating an emotional safety plan. Healthy spirituality. This is whatever helps us to process life, whatever helps us to be with the truth of who we are. Religious addiction is whatever we use as a substitute for processing life. It's an escape from the truth of who we are. Religious addiction can really be a ministry issue, but it's also a personal issue. One of the ways that my parents could not parent me was spiritually. I don't mean that they failed to give me a religious instruction, of course. They sent me to church and vacation Bible school and even to a Christian school for a while, all of which provided religious education. But they just couldn't stand behind and encourage my unique spiritual journey. And so far, I've defined spiritual abuse in terms of what is done, like trying to control the spiritual journey of another person. But just as emotional or physical abuse can include neglect, what is not done, so can spiritual abuse. My parents did not give me positive models of healthy spirituality, nor did they teach me how to trust my inner self. In his book Shame, Gershon Kaufman says that children need not only to see how parents live, but to be let in on their inner process by which the parents arrive at the decisions of how to live. So, as a child, we need to know what it's like on the inside of a spiritually healthy adult. In other words, we need to know how healthy adults process life. Because my parents could not reveal this to me and could not support my spiritual journey, I had to seek out other spiritual parents. Like many inadequately parented people, you might be susceptible to almost anybody who offered the safety, nurturing, and belonging that you need. One person explained, I joined what appeared to be a healthy prayer group. But this group gradually became unhealthy as the leadership changed and as the new leaders were exposed to teaching that emphasized authority, submission, and the subordination of women. At the meetings, we began to hear that we, the members, had the light. The others, or presumably just about anybody else in the area, were in darkness. The voices of women were now rarely heard at the meetings. We were asked to enter a new covenant agreement with the community in which we submitted major life decisions to the quote unquote pastors. The implication was that commitment to the community equaled commitment to God. Eventually, the entire community was urged to move to the Midwest where we could join forces with another large community in our battle against the world. There, we would be protected from those dangerous people who thought differently from ourselves. So you and I might be able to recognize that this person's story is someone who joined a cult. And eventually the individual realized it too. But at the same time, a part of this person was very vulnerable to the pressure that was exerted by the community. This person struggled with the decision of whether to enter a new covenant agreement and move to the Midwest. They desperately wanted to belong, and that's what the community seemed to offer them. This individual further goes on to share, I also noticed increasing feelings of shame during the prayer meetings and a desire to escape. When the leader spoke, I felt as if someone were pounding on my head. I longed to go outside and sit under a tree, where the evening air seemed so gentle in comparison. There I felt free to be myself. Fortunately for this person, they were able to get out. Just as emotional abuse includes expecting a 2-year-old to behave like a 10-year-old, or keeping a 10-year-old as dependent as a 2-year-old, so spiritual abuse includes pushing people to a stage of faith development for which they are not yet ready, or trying to keep them at a stage that they've outgrown already. In the comments section under this lesson, I want you to recall an experience of religion in which others encouraged you to explore, to think of what you thought and feel what you felt. A time when God became big, bigger than you ever imagined. Who were you with, and did he or she in some way say or do something that gave you such a sense of freedom? How did you feel? Recall an experience of religion in which you did not feel free to explore. A time when you were told there was only one way to believe. How did that feel? Who did you wish had been there with you? What do you wish that that person had said or done? And lastly, notice the difference between how you felt in these two experiences. What does this say to you about what kind of religious environment is healthy for you and what isn't?